99% of the time it was a close air support in I Corps of the Marines in I Corps. There'll be a forward air controller who will drop smoke where the target is, and you're orbiting probably 10, 12,000 feet.
Roger, I'm coming in from the southeast. I have you in sight now.
Once you decide what direction the bombing run is going to be, the leader then rolls in the particular direction that you're going to make your run on, and then he drops his bombs and gets off the target, and then the number two does the same thing, and if there's a 3 and a 4, they do the same thing. In a lot of cases, we would drop 500-pound bombs, and we also dropped a fair amount of napalm. You're dropping bombs by flares at night in mountainous terrain, and so you got to be really pretty careful. I did come back with a bullet hole in my stabilator one time, but I didn't know that it had happened. They told me about it after I got back. And that's the closest that I ever got to being shot at. I had a mission to do, and the mission was to destroy the target. And you destroy the target, and if there's having to be people there, then, I'm sorry about that. That was the mission. I didn't think an awful lot about it. The squadron was there 6 months before the retrograde started, which is where we were starting to leave country, and that was in 1971. We island hopped the squadron from Vietnam back to El Toro, and then since I had only 6 months in country, I went back to Vietnam to finish my tour. When I went back to Vietnam to finish my second tour, I got set up to fly with the helicopter group at Marble Mountain. So I flew some helicopters while I was there for my last 6 months. A little different from fixed wing. I have to say the helicopter pilots, they earned their money. They had tough row to hoe. They were always low, and a lot of times they weren't real fast. It's a CH-46. I had a friend who was in a squadron over at Marble Mountain, and he was able to get me into the squadron to get flight time. I flew resupply missions, basically, is what I flew. I was a co-pilot. It's a really, really nice airplane. The purpose of the war was to keep Vietnam from falling to the communists and the communists taking over Southeast Asia. My biggest complaint in terms of what we did was that services had their hands tied behind their back, in that the war was being run out of the White House, and there was not an ending in terms of a surrender. We were precluded from doing the things that actually that the military was created for, and that was for winning. Targeting was done out of the White House. Targeting was done out of the Pentagon. There was just a lot of things that we could have done, I believe, that would have made things considerably different than the way it turned out. I was very disappointed in terms of how we let the South Vietnamese down after we had spent so many years there trying to keep the North from taking over the South. I went to work for a Lockheed shipyard in Seattle, and we built landing ships docks, LSDs, which are landing craft carriers. They carry 3 or 4 landing craft. And in the meantime, I had made friends with a gentleman down in Lockheed Missiles and Space. Actually, I was responsible for supplier quality assurance, and went to the Space Systems Division, which we were building the Hubble Space Telescope at that time, and we were building a lot of the spy satellites at that time. My responsibility was to make sure that the products, that the parts that were coming for the telescope itself met the specs for the telescope. I was with Lockheed for 10 years. By that time, we'd bought a second home in Sun River, and I was kind of anxious to get up to Oregon again, so. These are running medals that I've gotten from 2008 to 2022. I had run the Marine Corps Marathon in 1979. I finished in 3 hours and 57 minutes. And then I ran Boston in 2011. I think I was 78 at the time. If I had to estimate the number of runs that I've done is probably 75. The number of events that I've done is probably 150 or maybe 200 events. I want to keep going. And in order to keep going, you got to keep going. So you never give up, and you don't know what you can do until you try it. The discipline that I learned in the Marine Corps has got a lot to do with the fact that I'm not giving up. During the time that I was in the military, I was in the military. That was my job. That was my calling. It was only after I retired that I began to appreciate having the career that I had, and yeah, basically I would do it exactly again. And I'm very, very thankful that my family supported me throughout my career. Anything that I would be the most proud of is my family and how my family turned out. And I have to give a great deal of credit to my bride.